I feel like a lot of us take for granted the amount of big brain power it takes to be good at puzzle solving, let alone to make a game that's built entirely around it. Antichamber, a game that was fully released 7 years ago, does not take this for granted. The simplest way to describe Antichamber is that it's a labyrinthine puzzle solving game where your goal is to get from this room to the exit. But of course the game is much more complicated than that. There are even a bunch of parts throughout the game where you walk this same hallway past the exit door only to find that it's not really the exit. The thing about Antichamber is that the rules of the universe are bizarre and they feel like they could change at any time. The first thing this game does to you is prompt you to jump off a cliff. Then you're led through these blinding white hallways until you come to this fork in the road. You pick a staircase only to find yourself in an infinite loop. Then you turn around and find out the room you came from originally is now this spiraling corridor of bright changing colors. Then you wind up at this dead end where you read a sign and look behind you only to find that that same corridor is now gone and it's just a wall with a drawing of the escape key. And now you're back at ground zero. Immediately you know that this is the kind of game that will mess with your head the whole way through. Even as you get further and further and upgrade your gun to the highest point, the game never feels predictable. It even intimidates you with this 90-minute time limit, which makes you think, oh shit, what if the time runs out? And when it does, it just says, man, fuck the time limit, who cares? The game is just so bizarre, and you could spend a long time working on a puzzle only for it to result in a dead end. You see this trampoline elevator thing? By using some blocks, I was able to bounce it lower and lower, which in turn made me bounce higher and higher, which meant when I came back down it went lower and lower, and it was pretty much just rinse and repeat until I got all the way down to the bottom of the shaft. It must have taken me at least 5 minutes or so of just jumping up and down this elevator. And what did I have to show for it? This. What is this? What does it do? Well, I tried everything I could think of and nothing happened, so I could only conclude that this was a dead end. Then there was this part where I used my mighty Phantom Bane brain to use a level 3 gun on a puzzle that I think was intended for the level 4 gun, and just barely managed to make it work, even though that was clearly not how I was supposed to do it. And then it brought me to this room with all this sweet concept art, and I gotta be honest, the concept art was pretty cool, but it wasn't really progress, so it felt like a letdown. Now, if this was any other game, this kind of thing would have pissed me off, but the beauty of Antichamber is that the game feels as though it's designed to avoid pissing you off. Navigation on this scale would be a pain in the ass, which is why they give you this map in the main room which lets you choose whichever room you want to go to. The soundtrack is just this light, contemplative ambience, the kind of music you might put on for studying or writing an essay. The game is always handing you these signs with quotes on them, and you wonder, is this really just pragmatic life advice, or is it a hint? You can't even die in this game. There are no all-destroying enemies. Well, there kind of is, but that's a spoiler, so I'ma shut up. The game's atmosphere is so mesmerizing that even when you're stuck, it never feels like a failure on your part. Instead, it feels more like your inevitable victory or enlightenment or whatever it is you're trying to achieve has just been delayed. Since the game feels like it's constantly changing, it still takes some time before you can confidently say, okay, I get it, I understand. And even then, you can't really say that. The game is always forcing you to question what you're seeing and whether it's just an interesting detail or something important. It's always hitting you with strange abstract imagery that could mean nothing and everything at the same time. If someone saw this and didn't know what it was, they might think it's some weird mind control game like Polybius. It's just so captivating and it's almost eerie, but not in a way that makes you feel uneasy or uncomfortable. Though it never tells you what to do, it nudges you in the direction of the solution. Even when you obtain the gun and keep upgrading it, it never tells you exactly what it does. Instead, it just says, click middle mouse, and then you do that and you discover that the blocks now move on their own, like Snake for Atari. But a lot of the nudges are often incredibly subtle, to the point that if you don't think about it the right way, it might just fly over your head. In fact, the only reason I'm talking about the game now is because I was stuck on it years ago and gave up. I just offhandedly remembered the game a few days back and decided to challenge myself again. In spite of me not having beaten it before, it stuck with me this long, so I just had to finish the job. Upgrading the gun is bittersweet. It's amazing when you first get the ability to place and take away blocks. Then you discover that if you create a frame, more blocks spawn within the frame, and you can technically create infinite blocks. This may sound on paper like it makes the game really easy, but it's got some dirty tricks up its sleeve. There are these voids that take away all your blocks, and later on, some of the voids won't even let you drag blocks into them. It's like a Metroidvania, but half the power-ups are not actual power-ups, but you absent-mindedly powering up your brain with new ideas. It gives you tools and then almost immediately negates them. But eventually, once you get all the upgrades, you realize that it's you who has to level up if you want to escape. There might be moments in this game where you think that what's happening is a glitch or a bug, when in reality you just don't quite understand what's happening and you gotta figure it out. There was one time where I experienced a glitch in that elevator puzzle, and on occasion the game will crash if you try to make a 3D frame with blocks or something like that, but otherwise, every weird thing this game has to offer is intentional. Antichamber might best be described as an avant-garde video game. There's no real narrative, there's no plot, there are no characters, no explanation as to what the chamber is, what it's meant to achieve, why you're even here, who you are, or even if you're a human being at all. And that's the game. It's a purely meditative experience. It clears your brain so that you can fill in all the empty spaces with your own ideas. It's a game that exists in the mind, as much as on the screen.